this object is simply a piece of another solar system that was expelled, and it has been traveling through interstellar space for hundreds of millions of years, billions of years, we don't know.
Oumuamua, by contrast, is the first observed object to come from outside of our solar system. And get this, once it got here, it behaved in ways that scientists can't quite explain.
A Pentagon report is detailing a dramatic increase in UFO sightings, more than 350 since 2021. Many of them are explained as being drones, birds, or weather events, but about half of them remain unexplained.
And what this report found is that there have been more than 300 new sightings of what the government calls UAPs, or unidentified aerial phenomena, or more commonly called UFOs, since the last time that the ODNI put out a report like this back in 2021.
We're going to have witnesses who can speak frankly to the public about their experiences. We've had a heck of a lot of pushback about this hearing. We've had members of Congress who fought us. We've had members of the intelligence community and also the Pentagon. Even NASA backed out on us. There are a lot of people who don't want this to come to light.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
I do not have an explanation for what this specific object is.
There are many commentators who say that the non-human beings, the aliens, call them what you like, they're friendly, they're benevolent, that if they're real, they're no threat at all to humanity. Can we assume that?
There's zero information to suggest that what they are doing is for benevolent reasons.
In a modern world largely connected through globalism, it's hard to imagine being contacted by a previously unknown civilization, one grand in scope and who immediately unleashes their violent tendencies, leading to a complete evisceration of everything held dear. But throughout a significant portion of human history, that was a very real possibility. We faced an ever-present existential threat of encountering a dangerous and more technologically advanced group of people. And for those on the receiving end, it was often bad news. Stone beat stick, copper beat flint, iron beat bronze, and eventually gunpowder beat anything that came before. Entire wars have been ended by a nation flexing its advancements in weaponry. Although, as time went on and the world began to shrink, fears of contacting a new civilization went away. Today, we still very much fear advancements from known adversaries around the globe, but at least they're familiar entities. With very few exceptions, no longer do humans look out across the ocean and wonder just who or what exactly is blotting out the horizon. At this point, the only way the vast majority of us will ever experience the fear of our ancestors is if beings from another planet began descending from the sky. That is what makes some science fiction so compelling. It allows us to explore that threat to great effect. More so, as it is technically possible, extraterrestrial beings could show up on any given day at any given time, and they'd likely squash us in an instant. Now, to be clear, I doubt it'll ever happen, at least in my measly existence. I do, however, believe life exists elsewhere in the universe, and that some of that life is far more advanced than we'll ever be. But given the size and scale of the void above our head, the likelihood of encountering another entity is astronomically low. But then again, when Mayan tribesmen looked out into the sea and saw Spanish ships heading towards land, if you had asked them the day before if they thought they'd see the sight of wooden behemoths bringing to their land a destructive force, they likely would have doubted the possibility too. This is what the mercy of gods brings to the table. It is a tale of humans losing a battle to aliens before the fight ever even truly begins. Just disappointingly, it doesn't quite live up to my lofty expectations. When I first heard of this novel, I was deeply excited. I rarely buy books on the day or week that they release, if only because there's already too many books and too little time. But as a big fan of The Expanse, I was entirely ready to hop on the story as soon as I saw it was written by the duo who go by James S.A. Corey. This is the first entry in a planned trilogy, and its synopsis is pretty great. Paraphrasing the back of the book, technically the inside flap, it's about a hive-minded and galaxy-spanning alien empire called the Carricks that have been conquering other planets for who knows how long. They hop throughout the galaxy and dismantle and enslave other creatures, killing entire species if they fail a usefulness test, or if they pass, forcibly recruiting them into their own war against what appear to be the Carricks' only viable existential threat. One day, the Carricks come across an Earth-like planet called Anjan, which houses a long-lost human colony. The people there are soundly defeated, and a portion of their best and brightest taken to a prison planet, not that one, and given a test that'll lead to their survival or extinction. While captured, one man named David will both save humanity and betray it. Dun 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 dun. That's where the synopsis ends. That's also the ballpark while I'll limit most of my spoilers, meaning you can watch this video and be safe in knowing that I won't explain too much beyond what you'd learn reading a flap at the store. As already mentioned, I love The Expanse. I read book 1 in late 2022 and thoroughly enjoyed it, and then between January and April 2023, I cruised through the other 8 mainline novels as well as the compendium of short stories. What makes the series so great is that it has a wonderful cast of characters and some genuinely awesome action set pieces. It's a fully realized space opera that makes great use of its main and periphery characters. I enjoyed nearly everybody so much that when people started getting killed off, I felt it. There's actual suspense and thrills. It's emotional stuff. Hell, I'm still recovering from the absolute gut punch that is the literal opening sentence to book 8. The Expanse is also a series that maintains epic momentum. With the exception of a single book, the series never really slows down. In fact, the last arc is the best one. I view the series as 3 trilogies connected to a larger story, and let me tell you, books 7 through 9 are incredible. Everything amps up in the final trilogy and folds in on itself in a masterful way. It's a 9-book series that justifies its length and then some. There's a penis joke there, but I'm not going to go for it. I get excited just talking about it, the book, not the penis joke, and I really wish I could say the same about The Mercy of Gods, but so far it lacks a lot of what made The Expanse so memorable. For one, I was kind of bored reading it. The characters are nowhere near as compelling as the author's previous work. That's not to say everyone is all bad or that they bring nothing to the table. It's just what they bring isn't as fascinating or enthralling as what came before. There is an exploration of mental health that was a bit relatable, and I specifically liked a line towards the end of the book about how someone truly feels about the burden of another character's problems, but obviously I won't elaborate on that for spoilery reasons. But even keeping in mind some of the relatability, the character in question still didn't make for an engaging point of view. If I could use one word to describe the cast, it'd be interchangeable. Whereas The Expanse has Christian Avasarala, Bobby Draper, Alex Kimmel, as well as many other notable standouts who all feel vastly different from one another, this new book doesn't really have anybody I'd put on a pedestal. There are certainly characters you can tell are the main ones, but I had zero attachment to them. Humanity could die in this book, and I wouldn't have really cared. In fact, a lot of humans die in this book, and there's attempts to make you care for the ones who do, but I felt zilch, nada, zero. And that's the biggest problem with this novel. Things happen, people do stuff, characters die, fantastical elements are introduced, but I rarely ever cared. The Mercy of God starts off well enough. The very first page straight up tells you that the Carricks will be defeated and that their loss began with the invasion of Anjan. Somehow a lowly human named David will be their downfall, and so there's a lot of intrigue in guessing how he'll pull off the impossible, especially once we're introduced to the Carricks and the size and scale of their operation. It's hard to guess how humans can win. All in all, I enjoy the first 100-ish pages. Things are introduced that will have you pondering the role they'll play in later chapters and books. The actual Carricks invasion is good too. Their arrival is unexpected, only noticed a short bit before they begin their assault, and that's a terrifying notion. Imagine looking through a telescope one day and seeing alien ships, and within hours or days they're wiping out a large portion of humanity. It's a scary thought. Not much different than if we discovered a giant asteroid barreling towards Earth. One day everything is fine and normal, and the next we're staring extinction in the face with next to no time to react. It's the epitome of existential dread, and that helps elevate the source material. I won't tell you how they dismantled the planet or what shenanigans they pulled during the invasion. Just know that I was hooked during those pages. It's only later on that the story lost me a bit. I need to dance around certain topics, but as you know from the synopsis, the brightest minds of the planet are taken away and brought to a Carrick's planet where they are imprisoned with a massive assortment of other alien species. Here, the humans are given a test, and the entire fate of humanity rests on them being able to pass. At least, the fate of the portion of humanity that we're introduced to is at risk. One mystery of the book is what happened to Earth, and why don't the humans seemingly remember it? I'm guessing this will play into later novels, as it's not much of a focus here. As of yet, there's enough to come up with some theories, but not a whole lot to ground them with. I'm predicting the final book of the trilogy will have some major swerve, but we'll see. Anywho, the prison planet is a neat idea, but the execution is lacking. They're competing with other aliens to complete a goal, and it almost felt like I was reading a young adult novel about a competition between rival schools. It's not fully that, and maybe it's an unfair comparison, but there's a sense of it, and it didn't do a whole lot for me. Throw in some, lovey-dovey shenanigans between two characters, technically three, and there is this young adult vibe to it. It's not trying to be that, but it's more immature in some ways than I feel like their other books were. It also felt like the story dragged for about half its length or more. A prison planet is a badass plot device too, but this planet is fucking dull. I'm gonna give you a minor spoiler here, but I assure you it's pretty minor. It's just to temper some expectations. So the humans are taken off their homeworld to another planet, and in your head, if you think prison planet, you probably dream up all sorts of wicked ideas. The Carricks are an all-powerful being capable of dismantling nearly every other species in the galaxy. Surely the prison will be scary. Surely the weight of all the death and destruction will hang above everybody. But it's really not at all that. Instead, the humans are housed in a ward that mostly matches what they lived in on their own planet, just things are slightly off. They have normal doors, but the doors are just a bit too wide. They have bathrooms and human-like showers, just they're slightly off in their function. They have a kitchen where things are slightly off, and bedrooms with beds, and you get the idea. Most of the story barely feels like they're on an alien world. Even the lab where they do their work is similar enough to the lab they had in Iongen. Sure, there are alien species all about, and some of those aliens provide a threat, especially as the competition seemingly has few rules, but little is awe-inspiring or epic in scope. The descriptions of the Carrick's architecture is cool and grand, and I believe the normalcy of the human quarters is to convey the nonchalance of the Carricks. To them, killing an entire planet or housing potential survivors light years away is nothing. They don't need it to inspire fear beyond what they already have. It's just that it doesn't make for the most engaging of stories. For a grand tale, it's shockingly narrow in scope. And most of the time it barely felt like we'd left Iongen, and never mind the prison planet occupies almost 2/3 of the book. I do like how Mercy of the Gods ended, and it does set up what appears to be a far more interesting second novel, but I can't review this book based on what the future could potentially be, and what's here is an okay start at best. I didn't hate it, and it's certainly readable, with some nice world building to boot. It's also not the worst book I've read this year, but it is a step down from The Expanse in every sense of the word. Usually as authors go on, they learn a lot of lessons from their previous successes, but it just doesn't seem like they took a lot of the good feedback from The Expanse and applied it here. The more I've thought about it in the week since I've read it, the more disappointed I've become. It certainly tries to be more intellectual than The Expanse, and I can't fault it for trying. But the intellectualism is a bit shallow, and honestly, more than anything, it's dull. It's worth noting, too, that I'm someone who this year alone has already read 50-ish nonfiction books, the majority being science-oriented. I bring this up to highlight that I like science, and it doesn't have to be exciting. In fact, most nonfiction books are not exciting, and yet I still love them. So a fictional story slowing things down isn't inherently bad. Neil Stephenson, for example, is one of my favorite authors, and he writes a lot of hard sci-fi. He often gets deep into the science. But he also succeeds at it, whereas I don't think James S.A. Corey did here. What they present when they try to explain various experiments is yawn-inducing. Not helping make me care about these experiments is that the people doing them are just kind of boring. They did not have my attention. There's certainly some fascinating sci-fi within, and I fully understand the authors wanting to do something different, to which I'm honestly glad that they're trying. The Expanse is over. It had a satisfying end. I don't want or need more Expanse. I don't even need or want this book to be a balls-to-the-wall action fest. I just wanted it to be interesting and to give me compelling characters, and I think it dropped the ball in that regard. I suppose some of the characters are likable enough. David is interesting enough. The mentally ill Jessen is interesting enough. The Carricks are interesting enough. But I want more than that. I want far more than to say they were just interesting enough. Especially as other POV characters are not at all interesting. To put it into perspective, I can talk at length about the characters and the relationships in The Expanse. To be fair to this novel, I could even limit that convo to only the first book of that series. But if you ask me in a year the names of half the characters from The Mercy of Gods, I'll most likely give you a blank stare. With few exceptions, they're forgettable. And I think that's the most insulting thing you can say about a book. The characters and their relationships are forgettable. I simply lost the will to care. So much so that when some of them started dying, I felt absolutely nothing. I've had farts bring me more emotion than anything on display in this novel. The only true standout is something I can't talk about due to major spoilers. It ties into the larger Carrack's war, and it's clearly going to play a major role in how humans eventually win, but I can't elaborate past that. I guess here's hoping the second entry of the Captives' War trilogy can bring out the better side of James S.A. Corey. History shows they can do it, so I'm rooting for a rebound. Thanks for watching.
I'm an ancient being, I've been trying this shit for a million years. I could go anywhere, but I like it there, don't know what it is. I've got sweet tunes flowing, now I'm leaving my sorrows behind me. I hear bluebirds singing and I'm vibing to the world around me. You're no human being, you're not Earth and Homo sapiens, you don't